I don't know. It just seemed like they didn't really want to be out there.
3 years later, does that still ring true? Hi, I'm Aaron Muller, and this is episode 11 of the Cobsmacked Podcast. This is a Nebraska football podcast where we cover the Husker season and team news as it progresses throughout the year. Every video episode is uploaded to YouTube, and the audio versions can be found on Apple, Google, and Spotify. If you enjoy the content, please consider leaving a like and following wherever it is you're listening. It helps me grow the podcast, helps me reach more ears. Looking at this week's matchup, we have a Week 6 matchup against the number 9 Michigan Wolverines. Kickoff is at 6:44 p.m. On ABC. As far as the weather goes, it's supposed to be beautiful. There's not any rain in the forecast or wind in the forecast. It's supposed to be mid-70s by kickoff, so it should be a great fall atmosphere in Memorial Stadium for another night game. Looking at the Michigan Wolverines, they're coming in from the Big Ten East. They come in undefeated at 5-0. Jim Harbaugh, their head coach, has been there since 2015 with a record of 49-22. He is 1-0 against Nebraska. They played us in 2018 under him, and it happened to be Scott Frost's first year as the head coach of Nebraska, and it was a game in which we got totally physically dominated. The quote that you heard at the beginning of the podcast was from Chase Winovich. He was the Michigan player at the time. He noted how it just didn't seem like we wanted to be out there, that from the first moments that Michigan was putting up points in the first quarter, that he could look across the line of scrimmage and he could see the defeat and the folding and the giving up on our players' faces. And as a fan of any kind of team, you don't want to hear that your team's giving up, especially that early in the game when there's still so much time left to play. You don't want to hear that your team's giving up. For me, watching that game, that was the moment where I realized that, like, just how far we had slid from a physicality standpoint. You know that there was issues during Bo Pelini's time. Even though we were winning games, you could sense that there was a decline there somewhere, but it was never from a physical standpoint. There was never that issue there. Whereas under Riley, you hear stories of the team not being required to team lift or required to do squats or anything like that. And so you've seen how much that contributed to us getting pushed around like we did in the 2018 Michigan game. Looking at Michigan in 2021, though, we're going to look at their offense first. They're running a pro-style offense. It's focused on the run. I think a lot of these things come from Jim Harbaugh's experience in the NFL as a head coach, but they're averaging 40.2 points per game. Put that up against the Black Shirts, who are giving up 17.2 points per game, or even more impressively, we're only giving up 5 points per game at home. In a home game this weekend, under a big atmosphere and the lights and everything like that, I hope that we can lean towards that 5 points, obviously. Who wouldn't want that? But looking at their offenses in total, as I've been watching their games, they seem pretty vanilla. There's nothing like explosive or like interesting that you see, especially from a stat perspective. There's nothing that really pops out at you. But what you can see is that they're fundamentally sound. They're not going to shoot themselves in the foot. They're not going to draw penalties, crucial or otherwise. They're just very sound, very solid offense. But they do seem like they're struggling to find an identity, similar to Nebraska's struggles the last few years to find an identity. Yes, you want to run the ball, but like, what are you going to be known for? What is your bread and butter going to be? They seem to have found some kind of balance against Wisconsin, though. They threw twice as many attempted passes as they had at any other point in the year so far. So if they can establish a run game, they're going to be more likely to pass it as well. But, I mean, that goes without saying. Looking at their offense, though, the biggest upside that their offense has isn't a single player. It's the whole offensive line. So offensive line is generally a big thing in the Big Ten specifically, but this is a big, veteran, aggressive offensive line. They don't have a Heisman candidate back there at quarterback or at running back. They don't have explosive playmakers on the outside of wide receivers, but they do have a great offensive line. That's a great baseline to have for any team. If you have a good offensive line, you're going to have a good offense. You might not have a great offense, but you'll have a good one. So it raises the floor a little bit on what your offense is capable of. Looking at the stats, their starting quarterback has not been sacked all year. They did give up one sack to the backup quarterback, but, I mean, that's a backup. The starting quarterback hasn't had to worry about that so much. The turnover thing is also playing off of the offensive line. So their turnovers, they have one on the year, I believe. It's one interception. It was kind of a throwaway anyway. So, again, the fact that the offensive line is so solid, the quarterback has time to throw, the running backs have holes to run through, and so then they don't have to worry about the turnover so much. So that plays into that. Looking at the quarterback specifically, it's junior quarterback Cade Mcnamara. He has 5 touchdowns and 0 interceptions. Harbaugh likes what he brings to the table. He talks about him quite a bit. He's consistent and he's safe. He's not going to beat you with his arm. He's not going to launch these balls downfield. He doesn't have a big arm from what I can see. But he is consistent. He's able to move the ball consistently. He has a command on the offense that isn't from a singular perspective. It's from as an offense as a whole. They're consistently getting first downs. They're consistently moving down the field. 51% of their drives, in fact, result in scores. So take that for what you will. They're able to score when they get the ball. Specifically, though, he's not particularly mobile. He's able to scramble out of the pocket if it has issues there and extend the play, but he's not going to take off and run on you like Adrian Martinez is. But he's also not asked to do that. He's not asked to run with his feet. He's not asked to beat you with his arm. He's asked to just play his role as a Michigan quarterback. They focus on the run game, so he's not tasked with a whole lot to do. They do prefer to run to set up some pass plays and stuff, but as far as the red zone goes, I think that might contribute to why he only has 5 touchdowns as opposed to more. Once they hit that red zone, the running backs take over and they kind of punch it in from there. Looking at the run game, they are coming in with an average of 205 rushing yards per game. It's kind of split between 2 backs. They have a sophomore Blake Corum and a senior Hassan Haskins. They combined for 890 yards so far this year and 14 touchdowns. Corum seems to be the guy who's more speedy, more dangerous in open space, whereas Haskins seems to be the bruiser, the bigger back. He seems to thrive more in the in-between tackle runs, whereas Corum seems to do better on the outside on the stretch plays and things like that. Something else I noticed from the offensive side is that Harbaugh likes to go for it on 4th down, regardless of where they are on the field. It seems like he's going for it. They've had at least one fake punt that they've converted on. They've converted on 8 of 12 attempts. So, I mean, he's going to go for it. He's going to play those numbers there, and he's going to go for it when they think they can get it. He's going to have a lot of trust in the offensive line to be able to get that short yardage gains, and he's going to have a lot of trust in his defense, where if they don't convert on it, that the defense can hold the opposing offense to no points or to a field goal. Something that kind of plays into that is that they haven't played from behind at any point this year. They haven't really been tested in that regard, but if you haven't played from behind, that allows your offense to play more conservatively, kind of opens up the playbook a little bit more, and then that allows the defense to be more aggressive, send more blitzes, things like that. Looking at the offense, though, other notable players outside of the running backs and the quarterback, they do have a couple wide receivers that are notable. You have junior wide receiver Cornelius Johnson and senior wide receiver Dalen Baldwin. As I mentioned, they don't pass it a lot. They're really focused on the run game. But given the recent game against Wisconsin, and if we can get ahead, then they will be forced to pass it more. You might hear these two dudes, their names come up more often. They are deeper threats. They can make explosive plays. As I said, they haven't been tested a lot, so you don't really see a lot from those two dudes. Switching over to the defensive side of the ball, they run a standard 4-3 defense. They have a defensive coordinator from the Ravens. They seemed like they run a lot of NFL schemes on that defense. They're only giving up 12.8 points per game. Put that up against our offense, who is currently scoring 32.3 points per game. That's a big, drastic difference. A lot of the stats, though, if you look from team to team, from Michigan compared to Nebraska, a lot of them are very similar. They're within like 5 points of each other on everything. Total yards are within 50 yards. We do pass it more than they do, but rushing is about the same. Yards allowed is about the same. Things like that. The defenses are pretty comparable. The offenses are different, but they're able to get yards. So I think that's going to play into a little bit more, but we'll get into that later. Their defense ranks 6th in most in points allowed this season. Again, though, they haven't been tested. They haven't really gone up against an offense like we have, so we'll have to see how that plays into it. The biggest upside as on the offensive side was their line. They have a big, aggressive line. They have a senior defensive end. He's listed as a defensive end, but he's more of a nickel, like Jojo Doman is on our side of the ball. He can drop back into coverage. He's known as a pass rusher. He's going to be a first-round draft pick from what I've seen. Aiden Hutchinson, he's a senior. And you also have to look at junior linebacker David Ojabo. That's going to be a tough matchup. We have Teddy Prohaska on one side and Turner Cochran on the other. And those two guys are a true freshman and a freshman. They're going to be going up against all Big Ten conference players as a pass rush. That's a lot to ask of any lineman, let alone two freshmen going up against the best people in the conference as pass rushers. Hutchinson and Ojabo combined for 8 of the 13 sacks that the team has on the year. They have a Big Ten player, it seems like a conference player, in every unit that they have. So they have one on the line, they have one as a linebacker, they have one on the corners. It seems like they have big playmakers everywhere. So they're great at sniffing out screens and play actions. They're great at blowing up plays behind the line of scrimmage. Something to notice is that they are fast horizontally along the line of scrimmage. I haven't seen too much of a vertical threat there from the cornerbacks, but the linebackers are quick about getting from the middle to the outside very quickly. So that's why they're able to blow up these screen passes and play actions quite a bit. I haven't seen a lot of turnovers. They haven't been grabbing a lot of balls. It's the same as our kind of issues. They have a lot of opportunities, but they're just not getting them, not coming down with them. They have 2 interceptions and 4 fumble recoveries on the year. As I mentioned, 13 sacks on the year. Their corners are okay, but again, they haven't been tested. They have a junior defensive back, Daxton Hill. He tackles well, and he contests almost every pass that comes his way. But outside of him, that could be exploited. There's room for movement there. As we get into one of the keys, too, I'll talk about it, that we have a lot of weapons on the offensive side, especially the wide receiver core. I don't know how they are going to be able to cover all of our weapons at the same time if they're all on the field at the same time. Looking at their special teams, though, they have a 7th and the 8th top return men in college football for like punt returns. And their kicker is senior Jake Moody. He is 8 of 9 on field goals this year. He is really consistent. And this kind of goes across the whole team. Their whole team is consistent, and their whole team has contributed to their wins at some point or another. And that's a well-rounded football team. That's why they're favored in a lot of games. That's why they're favored in this one, is because we haven't been consistent. But they have been. They have been consistent through 5 games, and we're going to have to be consistent if we want to stay in it. Looking at the keys for the game for Nebraska, the offensive line needs to continue where they left off last week. They played really well last week. That was against Northwestern. Northwestern is what it is this year. We kind of talked about that last week, that yes, it was a great win. Yes, it was a great performance, but it was against Northwestern, and they have significantly declined since last year. We have, as I mentioned, the 2 freshmen going up against all conference defensive ends, and that's a lot to ask. I don't expect perfection from the offensive line this week or even the same performance that they had last week. I just want to see fight, and I want to see aggression. I don't want to see them getting beat on every play. They are big on the defensive line, but so are we. We have grown from 2018. I don't want to see that same, essentially that's what I'm getting at. I don't want to see that same defeat that we sensed from 2018. I don't want to see our guys giving up in the game at any point. It could be down to the last few minutes in the fourth quarter. I want to see fight, and I want to see aggression, and I want to see the motivation to try to push guys off the ball. If the offensive line can hold, we can establish a rushing game. Frost mentioned it, that they want to run it, we want to run it. They want to stop it, we want to stop it. The team that gets behind has to throw, and probably isn't in a good spot. That was a quote. We've seen how last week impacted the offense as a whole when we got the running game going. That Yant-Johnson combo that we have needs to be consistent to set up the passes and the play action and the option. If we can get the running game going, that opens up our offense, drastically. We have so many other options rather than just trying to chuck the ball down the field, especially because if they're getting to us with 4 linemen and not having to push anybody else up, they're not having to blitz anybody else, that allows all these other guys to drop back into coverage. And so that's going to make it a really rough day for Adrian Martinez. I also think that the option is going to be key. That's kind of become our identity as Husker football team. I love it. I don't have any problems with that. Michigan did struggle against Noah Vedral at Rutgers. Rutgers is the most comparable team that I've seen them play against so far, and they only won that game by 1 touchdown. And there was many opportunities for Rutgers to come out of that game with a win. Adrian Martinez is better than Vedral, especially at when a pass play breaks down, he's able to scramble. I assume that Michigan's going to have a spy on him at some point or often in the night. They don't want him to bust off these large plays, but then that opens up the option packages. If they're going to have somebody on Adrian, that will allow him to pitch it out to his running back and get these yards. I don't expect a ton of big plays like we had against Northwestern, but I do think that the option is going to be very hard to defend against, and if we can do an option pass scheme at some point, that's going to allow the defense to get stretched out as well. It's going to be hard to defend against if we run it well, but this is all going to, again, depend on Adrian continuing to play smart and not forcing anything. This has probably been Adrian's best year so far as decision-making goes. And he doesn't have this hesitation that he had last year. That was my big critique with him last year, was that it seemed like he was hesitating, whether it be a pass play and reading through his progressions or whether or not to take off and run. He was hesitating, and that half-second hesitation hasn't been, like, we haven't seen that this year. If he runs, he runs. If he needs to pass it, he chucks it there. He's not putting the ball in a position where a defender is going to be able to go up and get it. He has 2 picks this year, but I just feel like he's been playing on a different level than what he has been, and he just needs to continue playing smart. Even if we get behind, we need to play the football that we've been playing, and we should be fine. Another key that we have is the pressure and turnover. So Harbaugh had said in a postgame, and I couldn't find the clip, but he had said in a postgame that McNamara had been hit in the Wisconsin game. He didn't get sacked, but after he let go of the ball, he got hit, and that it kind of threw him off his game, kind of threw him off of his timing. If the Black Shirts can apply pressure all game and get to him, I'm sure they can get sacks this game. But if they can get to him, he will start making mistakes, especially if we can get ahead and force him to pass more often. He's going to be forced to pass in situations where he's not comfortable. The pocket's not stable. If we can get back to him, Garrett Nelson, I expect to have a big day. I expect to have some blitzes that come in and make him uncomfortable and get rid of the ball sooner than he would like. He's capable of making mistakes. He just hasn't been under that kind of pressure this year, so I expect that to change. Reimers and the cornerbacks need to come down with balls as well. So when he does make those mistakes, Reimers had a couple last game, and he's had a couple this season too, where he gets his hands on it, but he doesn't hold onto the ball. Cornerbacks too. Cam Taylor-Britt has had a couple too, where it's hit his hands and he's just not able to hold on to it. They need to come down with those because turnovers in this game are going to be huge. Forcing fumbles is also going to be huge. If you can hit McNamara when he's mid-pass and he's not ready for it, chances are there's going to be turnovers. Chances are there's going to be turnovers on both sides of the ball, whether that be Nebraska fumbling it or throwing a pick or them doing the same thing. I think that turnover battle is going to be very telling at the end of the game and may just decide it. The last key that I have is that we need to score early. As I mentioned, that Michigan hasn't played from behind at any point this year, and that could cause them issues and throw them off their rhythm. If they're forced to play more aggressively outside of their element, outside of just running the ball over and over, especially if we can shut down the run game like we have been. Looking at Michigan State, we were able to shut down Walker, and he's gone right back to being the best running back in college football by many standards. So if we can go against lesser running backs but a better offensive line, if we're able to get back there and shut their running game down, then that would be forcing them to play a different kind of football that they're not used to. So if we can score early, that'll allow our defense to not have so much pressure on them and play more freely. That'll allow our offense to play more consistently and not feel like they have to push the ball down as quickly. Expectations and thoughts on the game. The last time we faced them, we were physically outmatched. I kind of led into that, but it's almost like we didn't belong on the same field as them. As I mentioned, it felt like a high school team going up against a Big Ten college team, and it did not feel good from a perspective of a Nebraska fan. Some players are still here that played in that game, JoJo Doman being one, Ben Stille being one, and they noted the changes on the team. Adrian Martinez, it was his freshman year. They noted the changes on the team. They noticed that they didn't necessarily say that they would agree with the statement that Chase Winovich made, but they've noted that the team has changed, that that's a lot different of a team physically, aggressively, mentality-wise than it was in 2018. So this is a great opportunity to prove that we've truly turned the corner. Last week, a lot of people felt like that big win over Northwestern was our going over the hill, that our coming around the corner. That was our moment. We need to prove it against a big team, especially a top 10 team would erase all doubt of that. Frost is already looking at this game. He was already looking at this game the moment that the Northwestern game was over. As soon as he came off the field and they were interviewing him, he was ready to talk about this game. He said, I watched the Michigan game, Wisconsin game earlier in the day, and this is going to be a long week of practice. Memorial Stadium is going to be crazy. Think back to Miami in 2014 or Ohio State in 2019 when game day came into town. This is a top 10 team coming into an emotionally charged Memorial Stadium. Last week against Northwestern at a night game was huge. You seen the crowd and how loud and how passionate they were about this game. Now take that and multiply it, because now you have a top 10 team coming in against a Michigan undefeated team. On top of that, like, they beat us down the last time we played. I kind of made this tweet earlier in the week that I want to shift my perspective on the rest of the season, not so much on who we need to beat, who can we beat. I wanted to look at it from a player perspective, and that everybody left on the schedule, treat the schedule as a hit list. Everybody left on the schedule for Nebraska has either given us a beatdown or has beaten us in a close game or has kind of embarrassed us at some point since we joined the Big Ten. Treat everyone like an opponent, and you get an opportunity to beat every single one in a row, essentially. It's not like we get to play Ohio State this year, Michigan next year, Purdue the year after that, Iowa the year after that. We get a chance to beat 6 teams in a row that have given us a beatdown or embarrassed us at some point. So go out there every single week and win those games. I'm not saying we're going to go undefeated, but we get a chance every week to prove that. The team needs to feed off the energy in Memorial Stadium, though. They need to stay focused and they need to play. It's going to be a measuring stick for growth since that 2018 game. How much has this team actually progressed since then? You can see the physical evolution that we've had. Some people, I'm completely off topic, but some people were saying that the light show is a tradition now, like that thunderstruck between the third and the fourth quarter, that light show that was amazing and everybody's been seeing pictures and videos about, that's going to be a tradition. I hope that they kind of change the song up. I wouldn't want it to be thunderstruck every time. But I mean, I wonder what they're going to do during the day too, since the lights out wouldn't be so apparent. I'm sure they'll have something planned, but I'm excited to see what they have planned for this Michigan game. Anyways, going back, yeah, we can use this as a measuring stick for the 2018 beatdown that we had against Michigan and see how much the team has actually progressed from a execution standpoint, from a physicality standpoint, and then if we're able to win a close game, because most people think that this is going to be a close game. Still, I expect that their defense, as good as it is, that we are going to stall, we're going to have a mistake or even a turnover, but we need to be able to flush it and continue with the fight. We need to be able to continue with the aggression and the passion that we want this win. They want this win bad too, and I think that's going to be a big who wants it more scenario. As I mentioned, this is the most versatile offense that they have faced this year. Rutgers is the most comparable to that, and I don't feel like they're anywhere near as versatile as we are as far as our wide receiving core, as far as our ability to run the option, just the playmakers that we have and the ability to get the ball down the field. I just feel like they haven't faced anything like that before, especially Adrian Martinez. He's come up in a couple different coach talks on the Michigan side that Adrian Martinez is a elusive quarterback, and they're kind of worried about him. But Michigan is solid in all three phases of the game, so we'll have to play solid as well. But enough of that. We're going to get into the final prediction. The final prediction for me, the spread right now is at 3.5. Over and under is at 50.5. I predict that the game's going to end 31-13. In the battle of the defenses, I trust Nebraska's offense to be the one to step forward and be able to score. I don't know that all 31 points are going to come from the offense, though. I feel like at some point there might be a fumble recovery or a pick six. I hope that it's on our side. That's what I'm kind of putting into my 31-13. But I feel like our defense is going to be able to hold their offense as vanilla as it is. I don't think they're going to be able to move the ball effectively against the Black Shirts, especially in the Memorial Stadium atmosphere where it's going to be loud, it's going to be charged. And I don't think that they faced pass rushers like we have right now. I don't think that they faced linebackers like we have right now. That front seven for Nebraska, I truly believe this, is that they have evolved drastically in the last year. Luke Reimers and Hendrich are both great linebackers, and they are so young, but they are playing at such a high level already. Garrett Nelson's playing at a really high level. JoJo Nelson's playing at a high level. Cam Taylor-Britt's playing at a high level. Even if you haven't really seen the picks and the plays that he's made, he's still playing at a high level. I just trust that their offense isn't going to be able to move it against the Black Shirts, as well as Nebraska's versatile offense is going to be able to move it against their. Even with their pass rush, as great as it is, and their ability to get tackles for loss behind the line of scrimmage, I feel like Adrian's enough of a scrambler. We have enough of an option game. We have enough of a tight end pass game. We have these deeper threats at wide receiver that we haven't had the past few years, that I just feel like we're going to be able to score on them. If we can get turnovers on top of that, we're going to get more opportunities to score. Michigan is good, but they haven't faced adversity yet. I want to reference a tweet from Adam McClintock. He's at CFB_professor on Twitter. He tweeted out some offensive efficiency and defensive efficiency ratings. Michigan's offense efficiency rating is 6th, but they have gone against the 96th toughest defensive schedule. Michigan's defensive efficiency is 8th, but they've gone against the 106th toughest offensive schedule. So they have really got offensive and defensive efficiency, but it's against the 96th and the 106th toughest schedules, respectively. Look at the Nebraska side of that. The offense is ranked 57th against the 71st toughest defensive schedule, and the Black Shirts are 6th against the 67th toughest offensive schedule. We've gone against Oklahoma. We've gone against Michigan State. Those two specifically are the offenses that we've gone against that I think kind of bumped that number up. But we've been battle tested. We have faced adversity multiple times. We've lost games, so we're not playing with this pressure to go undefeated. I feel like a lot of this is going to play into the mentality of the players. Like, we know what it's like to lose. We know what it's like to lose close games. We know what it's like to win big games. So now we can come into this game with a well-rounded perspective on this game and what it means to win. But I feel like the Black Shirts are going to have a big day, especially if we score early. I feel like pick six or fumble return is going to be very possible. So I feel like once they hit that adversity wall, Michigan's not going to play as well as they have the rest of the year. This is their second big road game in a row as well. And that could be taking a toll on the players. The energy from the stadium is going to play a huge factor in that. I don't think Wisconsin's anywhere near as aggressive or passionate as Nebraska fans are. I don't know if there's any more passionate fans in the country outside of Nebraska. So also at this point, at the time that we kick off game, we should know the results of the Iowa-Penn State game. If Iowa loses and we can win out till Iowa and then beat Iowa, we would essentially win the tiebreaker with Iowa and win the West. Pipe dream, most people would call that, but it's still possible. So if we know the result of that game, that means our dream could still be alive. If they win the Penn State game and then they win out till the point where they play us, it doesn't matter if we beat them or not. I mean, we still want to beat them because they've been beating us forever, it seems like. But at that point, if they lose, then that just means the dream is more within grasp for this team. So the Big Red could still be in the race. Anyways, that's going to wrap up this week's preview. We will be back here on Sunday for a recap of the game. Do you think I am delusional at this point? Because I put up a score of 31-13 when most people are predicting a 24-20, 2017 type game. I feel like it's going to be close until the fourth, and then something's going to change the momentum of the game, and Nebraska's going to be able to run with that. Regardless, if you think if I'm on, if I'm off, did I make any good points that you agree with? Let me know in the comments below, or let me know on Twitter at Cobsmacked Pod. But until next time, go Big Red.